This is Tuesday, the 25th of September 2018. We're in the midnight hour where there is essentially one day to go to the closure of nominations for the election for President of Ireland in October this year. And I've watched Jim O'Doherty over the last 4 or 5 weeks and put a huge amount of effort into seeking to get a nomination to stand at this election from the councillors, the county councillors. We live in a country where, according to our constitution, the only way that the people can get the opportunity to vote or consider you for a vote for an election is if you are controlled through the gatekeeping process of either 4 county councils, nomination from 4 county councils, or from 20 members of the Oireachtas, which to me is extremely controlling and undemocratic. However, in the next 24 hours, DEMA is now totally relying on 20 members of the Oireachtas to sign that they assent for her nomination for presidency, which is that they're simply fulfilling the democratic process of enabling us as voters, as equal citizens supposedly, to consider her for a vote. So what I wanted to look at here was the back in 2011, when the last presidential election took place, when Michael D. Higgins was just another of the competitors in a race where there already wasn't a sitting president. It was a quite different situation at the moment. At that time, Michael D. would have been aware he wasn't the lead contender in the polls, certainly, for that election at the time, and he would have relied very much on second preferences, etc. So I picked up an article from the Irish Examiner of that time, September the 27th, 2011, which I've highlighted here. I just want to look at a comment made by Michael D. at the time, and you'll see here is Michael D. Higgins said, "I have consistently described the nomination criteria for the presidency as outdated and in need of review. But I believe that they, that's the Labour Party members of the Council, should not seek to obstruct the entrance of David Norris as a candidate into the field." So here we had a situation that Higgins was already nominated into the process, but that he then asked his party's councillors not to block the nomination of Senator David Norris. And he, Michael D. Higgins, the intellectual, the person who's been lauded as having been a great president and human rights advocate, etc., he was stating back in 2011 that he found that the process, the nomination criteria was outdated back in 2011. 7 years later, surely they must be much more outdated than that, and yet we have total silence on behalf of Michael D. So in terms of implementing the democratic process in Ireland, why have I not heard our president, who has had lots of opportunity and lots of media outlets over the last month, crying from the rooftops, let Gemma play. I mean, he's already in a pole position by being a sitting president. And suddenly we don't hear this anymore. Now, was it that he was looking for special treatment for his then friend, Senator David Norris? Or was he actually trying to implement the democratic mandate of the time? However, the fact is that if Michael D. was so believing and so munificent about his human rights issues, etc., why isn't he speaking out about this? And again, to all of the other councillors who have, doubts about their allegiances, they should be saying, Michael D., the man who perhaps we would like to see him, he would call for this if he was the same man or a bigger man than he was back then in 2011. So, for example, I had written to all of the independent members of the Oireachtas, and here's an example of a response from Frances Black. And again, Frances Black rightly says that people have been talking about her becoming a presidential candidate, but that insofar as she made a decision, that I wouldn't be proposing a candidate, and stated she's supporting Michael D. And she says she's a supporter of Michael D, and therefore she doesn't think it would be right to nominate someone that I don't actually plan on voting for myself. And on that basis, I won't be proposing a candidate at this time. Now, this, to me, I'm sad about this for Frances Black. I'm sad, I'm sort of shocked. I'm asking myself, is Frances Black actually disingenuous in that she knows what she's saying and she's just, trying to pull the wool over my eyes? Or really, as a member of our Oireachtas, that represent us as people, does she not understand the Constitution or what the nomination process is? Nominating someone to stand for the election of presidency is not the same as voting for them. What it's doing is implementing turning the democratic key to give us, the citizens of the country, a vote. So it's perfectly valid for Frances Black to say that she would be voting for Michael D, and at the same time to nominate Gemma O'Doherty, for example, to be able to stand in the election. So I'm really disappointed in Frances Black, but more I'm disappointed in either the fact that she doesn't know what's going on, or that she thinks that the rest of us are just, magnificently ignorant. But again, I remind Frances Black that, her man Michael D, back in 2011, he said he consistently described the nomination criteria for the presidency as outdated. So in fact, if you're really a supporter of Michael D's, you'd be actually, doing what he says and supporting someone like Jim O'Doherty being in there. I want to go on to then Tommy Brown. So I'd also written out to him, and he then says, I don't need plans to support Michael D, but I wish Gemma very well in her endeavours. So what sort of backhanded compliment is that? Tommy Brown is one of the people who at his age shouldn't be worried, one, about his pension, or the fact that he can't make a life after the Dáil. He's absolutely, and because of his life experience, I suppose, representing righteousness and goodwill and democracy and everything else, Tommy Brown could equally nominate Gemma O'Doherty without in any way impinging on his personal rights to both advocate for and to vote for Michael D. Higgins. Then we move on then to there were three types of responses that I got. One was from those two who acted as if, oh look, our hands are tied, we can't do this. When in fact, according to Michael D himself back in 2011, not only could they do it, but they should be doing it, as he called on his Labour Party comrades to do at the time. Then we have, coming from another crowd of the independents, now we've Denis Naughten. And basically Denis Naughten, if you look at the last line, he's saying, I'll be making no further comment on any potential candidates for the post of president, but I am willing to talk to any potential candidate who has secured 19 signatures. In other words, he's saying, if you can tell me you've 19 other votes, I'll be the last man in. Now, I just wrote under this, a sheep. What sort of sheepish mentality is that? We have a situation here where whatever anybody says about Jim O'Doherty or otherwise, she has posited the idea of anti-corruption as a theme for the presidency. Now, the one thing I don't think anybody can suggest at this time is that Gemma O'Doherty is a spurious candidate or not a serious candidate. I think she has proven that. In relation to whether you consider anti-corruption to be valid as a sole or pure or lead presidential team, you'd want to be living under a stone if you think in Ireland that we are a country which either doesn't have corruption or has even managed to attempt to eradicate or properly deal with corruption, including you, Denis Naughten. And so here we have Denis Naughten saying, like playing games, if you can line up 19 others, then I'll line up. When in a country we need leadership. And in the community that elected Denis Naughten, I think that they would be rightfully ashamed at the sheepish mentality. So now we move on to another, Joan Collins TD. Joan Collins is not a shrinking violet coming forward, not a shrinking violet, but here's what she says. If any candidate can show that they have enough Oireachtas votes that my vote would be crucial, I would consider nominating on democratic grounds. So she recognises, according to herself, the need to implement democracy, but you see what I've shown here, a leadership mark of 0. She is certainly not putting her foot forward to say, I'll get out here and I'll point out, I will nominate Gemma, come on and follow me. But no, this is how loudmouthed our independent thinking opposition are in Ireland, that we're waiting for everybody to make the first move. Now we go on to the third type of individual. And there's the ones who are head down under the parapet. I write to David Norris, and I'm told, thank you for your email about a possible nomination. David is out of the country at present, but rest assured he'll receive your email. Now this is a number of days ago, say it's 8-9 days ago. Look, we're living in an international age. I don't know what country David Norris is in. I don't doubt that if he's like me and anybody else who's living in Ireland, that he has absolute instant access to Facebook, emails and everything else. So wherever you are in the world, David Norris, come out of your hole and deal with the question. And remember that back in 2011, you only got in as an independent candidate as a result of the munificence of our present president, who went out of his way to call for the democratic process to be implemented in full and to allow you to stand in the election. Where are you right now? And of course we have Halligan, our Minister Halligan, confirm the content of same, but it'll be brought to the Minister's attention at the earliest possible opportunity. There's more of these responses from presidential or from government minister independent people. They're too busy to deal with their stuff themselves. Never heard any more word back from it. So where are you, Halligan? You're down there, I think in South East Ireland, you're mouthing about all the rights of the people and all of the rest, and you're supposed to be standing up for, the little person and opening out democracy, etc. Where do I see you in a leadership role stepping up to the plate and saying, I'm going to nominate Gemma O'Doherty, and putting it up to the present collaboration between Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil to try and keep her out? And give us, more importantly, give me, the individual, a right to vote for somebody that I wish to vote for. And I move on to the fourth and final element of this video, which is a consideration of Fianna Fáil's position in all of this. And this picture here shows the interview that I saw Micheál Martin carry out with Ryan Tubridy, and not the other way around, by the way, on the Late Late Show of last Friday. And just to also contextualise this, I watched this interview. Micheál Martin looked very fresh, very well, fabulously presented, great showman, everything about him, being interviewed by a fawning Ryan Tubridy. And just to put in context what I think about what an interview process should be like, on Sunday morning I watched Andrew Marr on BBC interview Jeremy Corbyn, and by God did he give him a Jeremy Paxman complete, robust interview. And, listen to this interview between Ryan Tubridy and Micheál Martin. It was basically an opportunity for Micheál Martin to showcase stuff without having to answer a serious question. It was really drivel. That's what it was. Complete drivel, not even good entertainment. But more importantly, there are three things that I heard Micheál Martin say on this programme, and I just noted them down as I was watching. And the following three things, he was making this magnanimous statement that politics doesn't belong to party anymore. So, if you take that in the extent, essentially saying this is more than party politics. And yet, for the last 5 weeks, all we've watched in the local county councils is the gerrymandering of the whip between Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil to absolutely block Gemma O'Doherty from getting on the ticket. Absolutely. So, the practice on the ground within Fianna Fáil right now, Micheál Martin, is in complete contradiction to what you claimed on the Late Late Show. Number two, to strengthen that point, he said, we're not a monolithic party. So when he was being asked about, well, not everybody agrees with the party, he said, look, we're all open to all sorts of things. Yet, when it came to acting in terms of Gemma O'Doherty, they're acting as a complete, cohesive, congealed monolithic party. And I reached this particular point out to John McGuinness, TD, who I have also reached out to. John McGuinness is out there on all the various committees, and he's standing up for injustice and trying out corruption, etc. The reality of it is that his personal reputation stands in total contradiction to that of ex-Commissioner Martin Callanan, who at the Disclosures Tribunal gave diametrically contradictory evidence to each other about what conversation they both had, meaning one or other of these two people is both a liar and corrupt, either of which, whichever of them it has massive implications for corruption in this state. And yet, what is John McGuinness doing in this? He's hiding. He's afraid that he'll lose the whip of Fianna Fáil, etc. Politics doesn't belong to party anymore, and we're not a monolithic party. And then number three, he was talking about repeal, Micheál Martin. Again, the big man. We made an issue of repeal a conscience issue. So all of a sudden, the repeal in relation to Appeal the 8th, there was a conscience issue in which we wouldn't tell people how to vote, etc. And yet, in this particular issue, which should actually be a conscience issue about the right to put people in front of, to enable people to get on the ticket, to stand in front of all of us citizens, to give us an equal democratic right to vote for a person of our choice, his party, Fianna Fáil, and it would be a complete corruption of thought process on our behalf to imagine that Fianna Fáil are acting in unison throughout the country in blocking Gemma O'Doherty, and that this would be done against the wishes of Micheál Martin. So I call on you, Micheál Martin, that you should have been out there in the next 24 hours. You should actually follow your word and tell your party people that if any of them feel that they would like democracy to be put into play, that they would like their constituents, the people who they supposedly represent, to be given the free right to vote for a candidate of their choice. All this is about allowing Gemma O'Doherty to stand on the ticket. She may end up getting 1% and looking like a fool. That's fine, but it should be our right to do that, rather than the right of an elite class of politicians. And remember, I'm being told that the presidential office is above politics, and yet the reality of it is that only politicians, those elected politicians, control or gatekeep my right as a citizen to say who I should vote for. So I'm calling you over the next 24 hours, and anybody who watches this, to consider what I've said, to share it, and going back right to the very start. I want to repeat what I see Michael D. Higgins, the man who is now telling us he wants us to trust him going forward. He said back in 2011, I have consistently described the nomination criteria for the presidency and as outdated, when he called for other councillors and other Labour people to support his friend David Norris's